There comes a point when holding on starts to hurt more than letting go. Amy Fleming had spent years believing she could carry Ty's memory without losing herself. But in the quiet corners of the ranch, in the shadows of the barn, and the stillness of early mornings, the truth began to whisper. Ty wasn't coming back. Season 19 isn't just about life after loss, it's about the moment Amy finally stops waiting for the impossible and starts living for herself again. It was a cold morning in Hudson, the kind where the air feels heavy and the frost clings stubbornly to every blade of grass. Amy stepped out of the house with her boots crunching on the frozen gravel, Spartan waiting patiently by the fence. She had done this routine 1,000 times, but something felt different today, like the silence was pressing in, demanding to be heard. Her hands moved automatically as she fed the horses, but her mind wandered to the worn leather saddle hanging untouched in the barn. Ty's saddle. It had hung there for years, like a frozen moment in time, and every day Amy had found a reason to walk past it. Inside, the barn smelled of hay and dust, the air warmer than outside, but thick with memories. Amy's eyes lingered on the saddle, then drifted to a wooden box tucked in the corner, one she hadn't touched since the week Ty died. She told herself it didn't matter, that the box could stay there forever. But this morning, something quiet inside her shifted. She walked over, her fingers brushing against the rough wood, before slowly lifting the lid. The box was full of pieces of Ty's life, a stethoscope from his clinic, photographs faded at the edges, and a stack of letters tied together with twine. Her breath caught when she saw his handwriting. Her fingers trembled as she untied the knot and pulled out the first envelope. It was addressed to her. The paper was yellowed, the ink slightly smudged, but his words were still strong. Amy, if you're reading this, I'm not beside you anymore, but please, don't stop living for me. Promise me you'll keep writing, keep loving, and keep your heart open. The letter felt like it carried weight far heavier than paper should. Amy sank onto a bale of hay, clutching it to her chest. For years she had told herself she was strong, that she could carry on as she was. But deep down, she knew she hadn't been living. She had been surviving. And in that moment, the thought crept in. What if it was time to stop surviving and start breathing again? Footsteps echoed behind her, pulling her from her thoughts. Lou appeared at the barn door, her face soft but concerned. "I wondered where you went," she said gently. Noticing the letter in Amy's hands, Amy didn't hide it. "It's from Ty," she said quietly, her voice cracking. "I've been pretending he might still walk through the door." Lou stepped closer, placing a hand on her shoulder. "You've been holding on so tight, Amy. You've forgotten how to live." The words hit harder than Amy expected. She glanced back at the saddle, at the letters, and then at Lou. She didn't know if she was ready to let go, but she knew something had to change. Outside, the cold wind rattled the barn door. For the first time in years, Amy felt the stirrings of a choice, one she had avoided for far too long. That night, Amy couldn't sleep. The ranch was quiet, but her mind wasn't. The letter sat on her nightstand, folded neatly, as if putting it there would somehow contain the storm it had brought. But it didn't. Every word Ty had written replayed in her head, not as a gentle memory, but as a challenge. "Promise me you'll keep your heart open." She had closed her heart the day she lost him, as he sealing it shut behind walls she didn't even realize she'd built. Before dawn, she got dressed in the flannel shirt Ty always said brought out her eyes. She didn't brush her hair or stop for coffee. Something was pulling her, something she couldn't ignore. The air outside was still, the sky just starting to pale with morning light. She walked past the barn, past the paddock, her boots damp with frost, until she reached the hill at the far edge of the property. And there, under the lone tree, was Ty's grave. Amy stopped a few steps away, her breath uneven. She had been here before, many times, but never for long. She always found a reason to leave quickly, as if staying too long would break her. But today, she didn't turn away. She walked to the stone, knelt down, and pulled the letter from her pocket. Her hands were steady this time. "I thought saying goodbye would mean forgetting you," she began, her voice soft but certain. "But I know now, love doesn't fade just because life changes." Her words trembled in the cold air, but she kept going. "You've been with me in every sunrise, every horse I've trained, every laugh from Lindy, but I've been afraid to live. Afraid that moving forward meant leaving you behind, and I can't do that anymore. For me, for Lindy, for us." She placed the letter at the base of the stone, anchoring it with a small rock. The wind moved gently through the branches above her, a sound that felt like an answer. Amy closed her eyes and remembered the way Ty's voice had always carried warmth even on the hardest days. She remembered his hand steadying hers, the way his smile reached his eyes. And for the first time, those memories didn't ache quite the same way. They felt like light instead of weight. When she finally stood, she didn't look back. The walk to the house felt different. Not lighter, not free of pain, but steady. Like her steps belonged to someone who had decided to keep going. Jack was waiting by the fence line, watching her approach. He didn't ask what she'd done or said. He just met her eyes and nodded, as if he already knew. Back inside, Amy took Ty's coat down from the hook where it had hung untouched for years. She folded it gently and placed it inside a cedar chest, along with the letter and a photograph of him holding Lindy. It wasn't a goodbye. It was a promise to remember him with love, not with sorrow. Outside, the sun finally broke over the hills, casting light across the ranch. Amy stood at the window for a moment, watching the horses in the pasture. For years, she had been chasing the past. But now, for the first time, she felt the pull of something else, her own future. Ty had faced many storms in his life, but nothing could have prepared him for this. The man who once fought against wild stallions, braved freezing blizzards, and stared down life-threatening injuries, now found himself up against an enemy he couldn't see. A quiet, creeping doubt that had begun to eat away at him from the inside. At first, he tried to push it away. He told himself he was imagining things, that Amy was simply busy, caught up in the ranch work, or distracted by the demands of motherhood. But the truth was harder to ignore with each passing day. Every time he saw Amy laugh at something Nathan said, every time their shoulders brushed a little too long, every time her eyes lingered on Nathan in a way that felt different, it chipped another piece away from the trust that had once been unshakable. Ty had always known Amy as the kind of person who gave her whole heart to the people she loved. That's what drew him to her in the first place. But now, he was beginning to wonder if that same open heart had started to drift in a direction he wasn't ready to face. One evening, the air was cool and sharp, the kind of evening that made the leaves rustle like whispers in the dark. Ty came into the barn, expecting to find Amy working with a horse. Instead, he heard voices, hers and Nathan's. They weren't talking about the ranch. Their conversation was quiet, almost too quiet, and it carried a weight that set every nerve in Ty's body on edge. He stood there for a moment, hidden in the shadows, straining to make out the words. Nathan's voice was low, but Ty caught fragments. Something about trust, something about what we have, and then Amy's soft reply that he couldn't fully hear. The tone in her voice wasn't one he recognized. It wasn't her usual calm, matter-of-fact tone with a hired hand. It was warmer, softer, personal. Ty stepped forward before his mind could stop him, his boots crunching on the straw. Amy and Nathan both turned sharply, their expressions shifting in an instant. Amy looked startled, almost guilty. Nathan's face was unreadable, a mask that Ty didn't like one bit. "Everything okay here?" Ty asked, his voice calm but with an edge that betrayed the storm raging inside him. Amy nodded quickly. "Yeah, we were just talking about Spartan's training schedule." Nathan said nothing, only gave a small nod and excused himself, walking past Ty with a quiet, "Evening." Ty watched him leave, his jaw tight. The barn felt colder now, the space between him and Amy filled with unspoken questions. He wanted to ask her what was really going on, but the words stuck in his throat. If he asked, he would have to hear the answer, and he wasn't sure he was ready for it. The days that followed were tense. Ty threw himself into work, taking on extra chores, riding out farther with the horses, anything to keep his mind from circling back to Amy and Nathan. But no matter how far he rode, the doubt followed him like a shadow. One night, he returned late from checking the cattle and saw the warm glow of the kitchen lights spilling out onto the porch. Through the window, he saw Amy and Nathan again, this time sitting at the table, a coffee cup between them. Her hand was resting on the table, and for a brief second, Nathan's fingers brushed over hers. It was a small gesture, but to Ty it felt like a spark in a dry field, dangerous. uncontrollable. He didn't go inside right away. Instead, he stood there in the dark, trying to steady his breathing. He thought about the years they had shared, the battles they had fought together, the moments when love had been the only thing holding them up. And now, he wondered if that love was slipping through his fingers. Ty's breaking point came on a rainy afternoon. He had gone into town for supplies and was heading back when he saw Nathan's truck parked off the main road near a grove of trees. It was odd, too far from the ranch for routine work, too close to be a coincidence. Curiosity, or maybe fear, pushed Ty to stop. He got out of his truck and followed the muddy track, the rain soaking his jacket. And there they were, Amy and Nathan, standing under the shelter of the trees, talking in low voices. But this time, there was no mistaking it. Nathan reached out, brushing a strand of wet hair from Amy's face. She didn't pull away immediately. Instead, she closed her eyes for a heartbeat too long. Ty felt something inside him shatter. He stepped forward, and his voice came out sharper than he intended. "What's going on here?" Amy's eyes flew open, and she stepped back from Nathan as if waking from a dream. "Ty, it's not what it looks like." Nathan stayed silent, his jaw tight. "Then tell me," Ty said, his voice low but fierce. "Tell me what I'm looking at." The silence that followed was worse than any answer. The rain fell harder, drumming against the leaves, filling the space where the truth should have been. Amy finally spoke, her voice trembling. I don't know how to explain it." Those words cut deeper than any confession, because if she didn't know how to explain, it meant there was something to explain. Ty turned away, his chest aching. "When you figure it out, let me know." That night, Ty couldn't sleep. He sat on the porch long after everyone else had gone to bed, the sound of rain on the roof echoing his thoughts. He thought about leaving, just taking a ride and not coming back for a while. But the ranch, Lindy, and even Amy, despite everything, were still his world. For the first time in years, Ty felt truly lost, not because he didn't know where he was, but because he didn't know where Amy was, emotionally, mentally, in their relationship, and until he knew that, nothing else would make sense. In the days that followed, the tension between them became almost unbearable. Every conversation was short, clipped. Every shared glance carried a weight they both felt, but didn't dare address. And Nathan's presence on the ranch only made it worse. He was everywhere, helping with the horses, fixing fences, offering to run errands. Always there. Ty knew something had to give, and soon, because this wasn't just about jealousy anymore. This was about trust, loyalty, and the kind of love that could either survive the fire or burn to ashes. And in Heartland Season 19, that fire was just getting started. And now, the Heartland world feels both familiar and brand new. Ty's return has shifted the ground beneath every character's feet, but the questions still outnumber the answers. Can Amy truly heal the wounds of the past while building a future with Ty? Will Nathan remain a shadow over their happiness? And how will Lindy adapt to the changes that could redefine her family forever? One thing's for sure, this is not the same Heartland we knew before. The stakes are higher, the emotions are deeper, and the bonds between these characters are about to be tested like never before. We've seen heartbreak, we've seen resilience, and now we're about to see what it truly means to fight for love, for family, and for a second chance. So hold on to your hearts, because the next episodes will not just tell a story, they will make you feel it. And when that final scene comes, you'll realize this was never just about horses or ranch life. This was about life itself, unpredictable, messy, and full of moments that change everything. The journey is far from over, and if the past has taught us anything, it's that in Heartland, the most unexpected moments are the ones that stay with us forever.